Hi, this is Daniela Wolf with Bestie Life, the podcast, and this is your community to support you through the little and not so little events that make up your day-to-day life. From the I've got this moments to the I just can't moments. We are here to empower all women to find and develop the skills they need to find peace, balance, and the bliss in their busy. Through solo episodes as well as interviews with amazing women who share their journey and their story and how it works for you. I hope you find the inspirations to make you laugh, think, as well as maybe rethink what you thought you knew, and connect as we realize that we are all living similar ups and downs and don't have to do it alone. So excited for you to hear this episode, and thanks so much for joining me today. Hi, this is Daniela with Bestie Life, the podcast, and today I'm excited to dive into this conversation with Christine Cooper. She is the author of the book Finding Value, a Reforming Mean Girl's Guide to Creating More Meaningful Connections. She is a reformed mean girl who has dedicated herself to continuously developing exceptional people skills and growing her emotional intelligence. She counts herself as fortunate to now have lasting worldwide friendships, strong family bonds, and rewarding patient relationships. She's a pharmacist as well, so we'll talk about that. But thank you so much, Christine, for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
I'm excited to dive into this topic because I know I always talk about our relationships with others are part of our self-care, but I don't think we spend enough time necessarily always intentionally showing up, nurturing, all those kind of things. But I'd love to kind of dive into your backstory a little bit. What was your journey like? What led you to writing the book, and how did you get here?
Well, to go way back in my story, to tell you why I call myself a mean girl. So when I was a kid, actually even further back than that, my dad was in the Navy before I was born. But by the time I was born, he had actually transitioned to being a government contractor. And so similar to the military, we moved wherever the contract was. And so as a result of that, I ended up spending no more than 2 years at any school. And so you have to figure out how to make friends quick. In my experience in doing that, the fastest way to make a lot of friends quickly was to single somebody out and make that quick cutting remark that made everybody else laugh, but of course picked on that one person. And you continuously do that, and it starts to, you are the mean girl. You are the person that people either run away from and avoid, or they are at your table so that they're not the person being picked on. And so, yes, I had plenty of friends, but I wouldn't call them great friends. The foundation for it was pretty terrible. However, I didn't learn the repercussions of that until I was in college, because the first time I spent more than 2 years out of school was in college. And the friendship I built with my best friend in college is really what was a catalyst for saying, you know what, the person who's making these decisions is me, and the person who's making my life difficult is me. She and I had built our friendship based on gossiping about others. And we, of course, that foundation is not a good foundation. You are talking about whoever's not in the room. But at some point in time, naturally living our lives, she became the person not in the room, and I became the person not in the room. So we started talking about each other. And obviously, our friendship didn't last through that. And, prior to the demise of our friendship, I had started thinking about how detrimental this was and how I did not want to be viewed as this person. I wanted to be viewed as someone who was caring and nurturing, and somebody who was there for others, somebody who was honest and ethical, and all of those wonderful words that we hear out there. And then the demise of our friendship happened, and I went, you know what? This is the moment. I need to make my life better. I need to become the person that I want to be. And I do use the word reforming on purpose as an active form of the word, because I am a work in progress. This is still something I work on every single day. Gossip is not something I struggle with daily anymore, but weekly and sometimes monthly. Like, depending on how things go, I will catch myself and be like, oh, that's bad. Back yourself up. Let's dig yourself out, get yourself out of this hole. And so, for those that may struggle with something similar, or maybe even a different aspect of their life where they know they need to work on it and they work a little bit every day, I am right there with you. I get you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I appreciate, oh my gosh, all your vulnerability of this, because I know we all have those sides of ourselves that we're not proud of, that we're not in love with, but to be able to honestly kind of lead with that and bring it to the forefront, and knowing that, this is a side of yourself and a side of all of us that we don't always like, that isn't always pretty, even if it gets us the positive kudos and attentions and laugh that we're all seeking, and being willing to be like, I'm done. I'm changing that. I'm owning it, that I was the mean girl and that I'm not going to be her anymore. So thank you. Oh my gosh, for starting with that. Cause I think that makes it so much easier for all of us to be like, okay, I can breathe and let myself down, that not everybody's perfect. And we can all start with that vulnerable place of who we don't like within ourselves.
Yeah. And, it's really hard to do that self-reflection. It is. Sometimes we can't see how we impact others. But the more we do it, the more we can figure out what our actions did that impacted others, or our inactions did, because there's times when not taking any action can be just as detrimental as taking the wrong action. So thinking through that is important.
Absolutely. In the work I do, with bullying and the bystander effect and all those kind of things, they say the bystander actually experiences just as much trauma as the person being bullied. So when we see something bad happening to someone, happening to an animal, happening in any situation, we choose not to take action, we are also still traumatizing ourselves, even if we're not the target. And I don't think we take the impact of that into account. We just think, oh, not me, not my problem, but that's not necessarily the case.
Oh, I hear you on that one. There have definitely been times where I may not have been the one instigating something, but I allowed it to happen. And then I've walked away and felt guilty for not stepping in and not being more of a voice of reason or calm or whatever the situation may need at that time. And I don't like living with that guilt. I want to know that I am helpful.
Yeah. And it's hard. And especially with social media, it's so easy to see things happening and unfolding, whether we like the post or video or not. The fact that we know it's happening, taking that action and changing the conversation literally and figuratively around our relationships, it's something we do have to put work and effort in. And I think we take for granted relationships as far as when they're just naturally around us. Have you seen that as well?
Yes. You get comfortable with somebody and you think you know them, and you forget that we as humans, we constantly evolve, we constantly change. And it's in small little pieces. So if let's say your husband is around and you see him, of course, every day, and you forget sometimes to check in and say, how are you doing? Because right? You've seen him every day, but do you really?
Yeah. Do we really know? And I know before we started recording, I shared off camera that even sometimes, like, I think we put our best foot forward with everybody else, all day long. And then we come home and we totally kind of spew all over the people in our home some of the things that maybe we were bottling up or not communicating to the person that needed to hear it, versus kind of transferring that negative energy just, because the people who are in our home are conveniently there.
Yes. And emotional regulation in general is difficult, but we want to make sure it gets directed towards the right people. Whoever actually caused the hurt or caused the anger is the one that you need to have that conversation with. Now, of course, it's important to have a good conversation with them. And by that, I mean, sit down and try and be calm about things. Try to listen to their side of the story while also staying true to who you are and making sure your boundaries are not crossed. And that's hard to do. It takes practice. So honestly, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it.
Yeah. And even, if we haven't been a mean girl, or we feel like, okay, I have these relationships, but they're not the quality, they're not the strength, they're not my ride or dies the way we might obviously look at other people's relationships. Like, what are some of the basic steps when it comes to creating the intentional, strong relationships we're looking for? How to lead with that kindness? What are some of the steps you would share with someone?
So you could look at this from two sides. You can look at this, of course, from an established relationship and how do you deepen that? Or you can look at it from a brand new relationship. And so I'll kind of talk to both of those, but we'll start with the established relationship. And honestly, these are a little bit harder to work on because you already have certain normals that are there. But one of the things to do is to do that self-reflection and determine, are your needs being met? If not, what needs should be met? Are your boundaries being kept? If not, what are those boundaries so you can start enforcing them? And, we hear about this a lot in the media about, parents who don't necessarily, I'm going to pick on parents. I'm sorry. Mine are fantastic, by the way. But parents who don't necessarily listen to their children, especially grown children, and they cross those boundaries consistently. And children don't want to remove parents from their lives, but if you don't pay attention to their boundaries, eventually they will need to for their own sanity's sake. So listen to them. You may not necessarily agree with their boundary, but it's not your choice. It's that person's choice.
Right.
To have that boundary, and maybe ask them why that boundary is there. But the same thing for you. You need to reinforce those boundaries. You need to make sure you are valuing yourself, that your needs are being met. And in an established relationship, the difficult part is when you start to reinforce those, the people who are benefiting from you not having that boundary or not meeting that need are going to fight back.
Right.
And so you have to be prepared internally for that. And you have to not make excuses for that person, because the more excuses you make for their behavior, the more that boundary disappears and the more your needs are not going to be met. So it's really important to stay true to yourself.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, when we talk about establishing relationships, so brand new ones, it's much easier to establish those boundaries. Right. Because you get to set them from the very beginning. And if somebody doesn't meet them, that's fine. Right. You don't have to worry about it at that point. You don't have a deep relationship with this person. It's time to move on. Right. And you just know that they're not going to meet your needs. And, on the flip side, you probably wouldn't end up meeting their needs either, because you have these boundaries. Right. And they want you to not have them. That's their need, right?
Yeah. Well, and almost to flip both of those a little bit too, when I think of boundaries, you talk about it's about communicating your boundaries. It doesn't always have to be from a negative place. Your boundary that you want to communicate is, I like to get together once a week. I want to get to see you twice a month. And that boundary as well, when it comes to a relationship and strengthening that connection, I think we don't always communicate as well either. We have great friends and all of a sudden 3 months can go by without seeing them because we didn't hold that boundary of, I want regular contact with the people that I love and that light me up.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Let's take that one and blow that one up bigger.
Yes. And to reinforce that, one of my best friends happens to live in Copenhagen. So we are literally thousands of miles apart. And our rule is, when we get off the phone, we have to have set up our next FaceTime, so that we can make sure that we keep those touch points and those connections. And she's one of my favorite people. So yes, I want to do that. So make that kind of rule for yourself, that you're going to establish that you're going to continuously reinforce that connection that way.
Absolutely. And it's going to look different for everybody in every way, whether the person is long distance, whether the person is local. I have a friend, we've been friends for over 25 years. And with the way our lives are right now, it's more like we'll get a text like, I'm free in 15 minutes for a walk. You free? Like, it's literally like, we can't plan far in advance because we don't always know what's going on in our world. She's got young kids. I don't, things like that. But it's like, okay, if I'm free right now, I'm going to try and fit you in. And for us, that's just what works. And so I have different boundaries for different people as well.
Well, and even if you think about it between work and personal, you need different boundaries at work, because work has different norms, and then you come home and you have your home life is different.
Right. And so how have you seen this translate into your work? I know you're a pharmacist and there's a lot of people skills that need to come into it. I think, it's not just about the medication, it's about the relationships and understanding the people. How has that played in?
So when I say I was a dispensing pharmacist, I worked in a community pharmacy for about 9 years. And I actually have transitioned to a different role now, to where I help create continuing education for pharmacists. And so as part of that, I work with experts from all around the world. And my role is to make sure they understand what needs to happen and what we are looking for to deliver high quality education. And so that type of people management is, of course, very different than patient management. With patients, sometimes you have to put your foot down and you have to say, no, this can't be done. And it's never fun to do. You know, you're upsetting somebody by saying, no, this is not possible. But giving those explanations, giving the rationale as to why, that helps a lot. And it does make the conversation better. It will never be a fun conversation, but it makes it better.
It does. It does. Because even though I know you're a reforming mean girl, we have a lot of reforming people pleasers, which I am one of as well, you know, where again, that communication, that honesty, that ability to have hard conversations or honest conversations, they don't always have to be hard. I think we make them harder in our head than they really are. But that honesty and vulnerability part is what we shy away from. And so whether that makes us say yes to everything, whether that makes us be more of a quote mean girl, whatever it is, I think they can come from the same place.
They can. One of the best ways I have found to have these difficult conversations is to approach them with a sense of curiosity and to start with asking questions. Maybe ask, and you do have to be very cautious with your tone of voice, because that can come across as either condescending or very, like you're very upset. And you don't want that. You just want to be curious, like remove what you think happened, set it to the side for a moment, and then ask, can you help me understand what happened? Can you explain to me what your thought process was, or whatever the situation may need? But be curious and try to think about why a reasonable person would do this. In general, we are all reasonable. We have moments. I'll give us all that. But in general, we are coming from a good place. We want to be a good friend. We want to make sure we're there for the people in our lives that we care about. And so if something is negative that happens, oftentimes it is because of something out of our control. So let's have those conversations. Now, there are people, I like to put this little asterisk on there. There are people who will try to get as much from you as they can, and that is their goal. So just pay attention to if they are trying to be manipulative, if they're trying to weasel their way out of something very bad. And that's part of taking care of yourself. That's part of valuing yourself.
Right. I love that, though. Lead with curiosity and questions. But you definitely highlighted something that I think, you know, is part of where a lot of conflict can come from in our society, which is our tone, our way our voice sounds, because so many of these things I think are happening over technology, happening via text message. We lose that tone. We lose kind of that connection of being able to read how people are asking these questions and where they're coming from. And so it can automatically spin to the negative, even if that wasn't our intent.
Yes. And specifically because of that, I recommend, honestly, to pick up the phone and have that conversation, or to wait until you're face to face, because tone of voice is so important to how those conversations go.
Yeah. The nonverbals, I think we don't recognize how much we're losing when we don't see someone's facial expression, when we can't hear their tone of voice, when we can't see that empathy or see that care and concern, and all we have are some words. And if I've learned the hard way, if you punctuate wrong, if you use a capital in a wrong spot, all of a sudden you're being aggressive. And I'm like, what?
Oh my goodness, yes. So, and it's so tempting when you get an email and you're like, oh, I'll just reply really quick. And then you start to have that back and forth, and it just escalates, and you're like, oh, instead of that first time I replied an email, I should have just picked up the phone.
Yep.
And saved us so much time and angst and anger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and in addition to connections and relationships being part of our self-care, I always love to ask my guests about gratitude, because I think that's a huge part of our self-care as well. And so what would you say, Christina, are some of the top 2 to 3 things you're the most grateful for?
My family would be number one. We'll put that there. I mentioned I have amazing parents, and I do, but I also have a sister and a brother who are exceptional. And then my friends, through these meaningful connections that I've developed, I cannot tell you, they have volunteered to come help me when bad things are happening. They just show up, which I'm good with as well.
That's great.
they know if I've been quiet that I'm stressed about something, and it's time for them to step in and say, hey, why don't we go maybe take a walk together? They have built this connection. We've built this connection together. And so I get to be there for them, but I get that in return. And oh my goodness, how wonderful is that? And then, I'm naming the big three: family, friends, and then profession, but I love being a pharmacist. Oh my gosh. I tried about 20 different careers before I actually settled on being a pharmacist. And so one of the things that I think is really valuable in life is to go out and, of course, live it, figure out what you don't like, and figure out what you do like. Both are important. Pharmacy school, it's a doctorate, it's a professional degree. You get a doctorate from it, and it is hard to get through. And if I did not have the strength of character inside to know that this was genuinely what I wanted to do with my life, there are so many times I would have quit. And that perseverance came from knowing this was the right place for me. And now that I am a pharmacist, I've been a pharmacist for about 11 years. Yes, it's definitely high on my grateful list.
That's awesome. So where can people find you, grab a copy of your book, all those things?
Any major retailer, you can go out and find the book. My website, you can find it on there as well, is authorccooper.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, on X, at author C. Cooper. So awesome. Easy to remember.
And all those links will be live in the show notes below. So thank you so much, Christine, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know any questions or comments that you have. Also, if you can please leave an Apple 5-star review so that this episode can be shared with more women. There's 2 quotes that I love. Alone we may be strong, but together we are stronger, as well as when women support each other, incredible things happen. So let's be stronger and incredible together, as well as maybe just have some fun along the way. Thanks so much and talk to you soon. Bye.